We've got a flood. We've got people in fields disappearing. We've got a thief going into a house, and then we've got the Messiah coming.
Welcome to Season 2 of The Laughing Mystics, an unorthodox journey through the liturgical year with Laura Lewis-Barr and Marcy Mederi.
Welcome, everyone.
Oh, yes, welcome.
We're having a very odd day, really odd. I got into the sound booth late and discovered that I had prepared Cycle C instead of Cycle A. So I am completely unprepared. Completely. So this is cool. We'll see. It's all on the Holy Spirit now because
That's right.
I prepared for, we're going to have to wait like 3 years before I get to use what I prepared. Oh.
Yes.
All right. Well, let's see. I had a question. Can I remember a day of awakening in my own life, like a Kairos moment or a Kairos moment when I was grateful to be awake, like I realize I'm awake or I'm remembering being awake. And then I'll give you one more, the idea of what challenges me to stay awake. What puts me to sleep psychologically, spiritually. So we can look at it both ways. A memory of being awake versus what kind of lulls me into not being awake.
I think I'm going to pick apart at that second question. What lulls me from being awake, I think, is busyness. That can really narrow me, narrow my focus, because all I'm doing is honing in on tasks at hand and things I need to do. That can prevent me from really seeing and engaging the world and being awake.
Yes, I can see that. And your answer prompts my answer, which is my anxiety and worry about whatever I think needs to happen. I was stuck in a queue right before I came here, stuck in a line, felt pretty helpless. I wanted to get here. And I said to myself, it's going to be okay. And it's all going to be okay. And that's kind of a new practice for me. And so I think I can stay awake if I choose to turn off my worry and anxiety.
And sometimes doesn't really feel like a choice, I think. So that pause and taking a breath is, as you talked about, I think makes a lot of difference. And to ask that question, how will my worry help me?
Yeah. I think I also tend to really wake up when something goes really wrong. Like little things I fret about and big things I think I tend to surrender and wake up. And whether it's an illness or a loss of a job or whatever it is, I think big things always tend to wake me up.
Yeah, I don't know. Certainly, like those big events have woken me up. Just this summer, my husband and I, Ed, we celebrated our 10th wedding anniversary, and it was just so much fun. And we said our vows again to one another, all of our friends and family, and it was like stirring the pot of soup. It's like, wow, I really love this man. I mean, like I love him all the time, but just that moment brought all of that freshness of that love back.
I love that story, and it is an example of the power of ritual when it's done well.
Yes.
And with a lot of awakeness, entering our rituals awake. Cool. All right, let's try this.
Our first reading is from the book of Isaiah. This is what Isaiah, son of Amos, saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem. In days to come, the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established as the highest mountain and raised above the hills. All nations shall stream toward it. Many peoples shall come and say, Come, let us climb the Lord's mountain to the house of the God of Jacob, that he may instruct us in his ways, and we may walk in his paths. For from Zion shall go forth instruction, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. He shall judge between the nations, and impose terms on the peoples. They shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. One nation shall not raise the sword against another, nor shall they train for war again. O house of Jacob, come, let us walk in the light of the Lord.
Oh, wow. So much here that I could have explored. The first thing that strikes me is this idea of climbing a mountain and the effort it takes to climb a mountain. So we're not on the easy path. We're on a challenging climb. I ask the listeners to think about any physical climbs that they have. Rick and I have done plenty of those, and they're fun, they're exciting, they're scary, and they're treacherous. If you're not careful, you can get hurt.
Right. Well, and even the air gets thin as you go towards the top. You know, you have to breathe in a different way, have to slow down. You can't go as fast up a mountain. I do think of Jerusalem, though. Jerusalem is a city on a hill, and so that upward ascent to Jerusalem and that connection, because this is what Isaiah saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem, that going up to the temple, going up to Jerusalem, that connection.
Yeah. And I'm was also struck by he shall judge between the nations and impose terms, and what came up for me as I sat in a dream with this is we talk about this a lot, this ability to discern what is life and what is not life, moment to moment. What is the correct action? Yeah, what is the correct nonviolent approach to what's happening in Chicago? Or so this ability to judge and discern, and then as we do that, violence gets turned into the nurturing action of bringing forth food. What a different in terms of the images of war versus farming.
Right. And if we, even today, took all that energy, all that time, all those resources that we use for war, and turn them into farming and making food, right? What a different place it would be. No one would be hungry.
Yeah.
And though that's the terms that God wants, right? That imposition of terms is to be peaceful, is to produce good fruit, and in some ways makes me think of that Garden of Eden, you know, with all the good fruit, which is all over the prophets' writings, you know, all that plentiful bounty.
Yes.
Well, in the last line, O house of Jacob, come, let us walk in the light of the Lord. And, you know, and light is such a powerful symbol during which, at least in this northern hemisphere, is a time of darkness. So the light of Christ, the light of the Lord, is very powerful and so prevalent during Advent. And even if we want to think about our Jewish brothers and sisters, you know, they light the menorah for Hanukkah. Again, it's light and darkness. If we want to think about pagan traditions in the time of darkness. So it just taps for me into that universality of this powerful element of light.
Yeah, and there's a lot of darkness right now, and to believe in our own light, to
Mm-hmm.
light the darkness by small little individual actions that I might take. And I think the world is so dark that a small individual action, seemingly small, telling the truth, speaking the truth, it's a courageous revolutionary act.
So in religious ad, in Catechesis of the Good Shepherd with the small children, sometimes we dim the lights and light candles, and just for the child to notice that even just one small candle makes all the difference and how much light it emits. Just one.
That's a beautiful image. Yeah, and I think praying with a candle has always been very powerful for me.
Mm-hmm.
And that, again, it's a simple thing to light a candle and to connect with that symbol.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And just the movement of the flame.
A reading from Romans. Brothers and sisters, you know the time. It is the hour now for you to awake from sleep. For our salvation is nearer now than when we first believed. The night is advanced, the day is at hand. Let us throw off the works of darkness and put on the armor of light. Let us conduct ourselves properly as in the day, not in orgies and drunkenness, not in promiscuity and lust, not in rivalry and jealousy, but put on the Lord Jesus Christ and make no provision for the desires of the flesh. Boo.
I just think it's kind of fun that we have the word orgies. That's my fourth grade self coming forward.
Were they having orgies? Did he have to say that?
Apparently. You don't say it unless it's necessary.
Okay, I don't know. I mean, is it just like Paul? Don't exaggerate. Come on, man.
I don't know, that where the whole truth is, but I've always gotten the impression that Romans were into excessive physical pleasure.
Yeah.
Because this is to the people in Rome. And
Okay.
so I think they were having orgies and were drunk. So you booed. Why don't you like this reading?
Make no provision for the desires of the flesh.
Right. I underline that. But I'm going to go back to good old Richard Rohr, who says when we hear flesh, we insert the word ego. So make no provisions for the desires of the ego.
Yeah.
Well, and it's also a question, like a desire of the flesh, is that eating food because I'm hungry? I think people have taken this to quite an extreme, and starved themselves and worn hair shirts, slept on cold floors. And I'm not sure that's what this is really about. I think it's about orgies and drunkenness, promiscuity and lust, rivalry and jealousy.
And where I'm going to lean in that I like a lot is it's the time to awake from sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we were going to write a letter to Americans right now, what are the examples? And this is what we were just talking about. What would Paul tell us to awake from? Yeah. How are, binging television, my favorite thing. If Paul tells me not to do that, I'm going to be like, but Paul, life is hard and I want to have this pleasure. So then we get to pleasure and what's our attitude toward it? Like having some wine, having a good dinner, watching some TV. It does kind of make me less awake. I want to be less awake. It's been a hard week. I want to just chill.
Well, and I think for me, there's a difference between relaxing and numbing out,
Right. Good.
right? Like that glass of wine and a lovely dinner and a little TV, is relaxing. But I also know that if I play my game on my cell phone too much, it has a numbing impact. Or if I get caught in, the death scroll of Instagram, of all the little 2-minute, 3-minute video clips, that's numbing. That's what puts me to sleep. And then all of a sudden, a half an hour has gone by and I have no thought of it, which is a very different feel for me than watching an engaging show or movie, which I can really consider and think about at a later time.
Yeah, I guess what I'm trying, and I like what you're saying, I'm trying to figure out why I have the reaction I have. It's like, I don't know if it's just I've heard it so much before, or it's just not the right tone for today, or it has created the opposite of what we want, which is sort of an antibody bias, because maybe
And
it's
you're back on the flesh, not the awakening, right?
Yeah, I mean, but it's together. Like, I'm trying to think. I think the idea of urging us to be awake is something I really love. It's
Mm-hmm.
very
Mm-hmm.
Jungian, but the examples he gives don't doesn't work. Doesn't work for me. I think when we talk about busyness, worry, anxiety, I
Mm-hmm.
think those things are really get in the way of us being awake. Of course, orgies would get in the way of being awake, but I don't know. I mean, am I just too far from that kind of? Are you tracking what I'm trying to say?
It seems that that word flesh has really hooked you.
No, I mean, yes, but it's also all,
Examples?
yeah. You know what it is?
What?
I think part of it is, when I've really appreciated Paul a lot. He's not vulnerable in his writing here. It's just sort of a wagging finger, and it just doesn't work. This one doesn't work for me.
Well, no, I think there's a different tone in the book of Romans
Hmm.
because he is writing to a community he has never visited.
But he is Roman, so he might feel like he knows them. But go
Right,
ahead.
but he's writing to prepare for a visit as opposed to when he writes to the communities in Corinth, or Colossians. He's been there. He has a relationship with them. This letter is to kind of introduce himself, to introduce his preaching. And so I think there is a lot less vulnerability because he wants to put on a good impression. I don't know.
What do you make of "for our salvation is nearer now"? Is it just like we don't know when the end of the world is coming idea? Is that how you take that?
Yes, yes, for our salvation is nearer now than when we first believed. Or maybe it's, this is a Marcy interpretation, is that when I first believed, or when a person first has belief, they act in a certain way. And as their faith matures, hopefully, but as I get older, as my salvation is nearer than when I first believed, it's time to grow up.
Yeah. I have a big reaction to "let us throw off the works of darkness."
Hmm.
It's used against tarot and I Ching and probably dream work. Some people use it against yoga, anything that is of the East or anything that might be pagan. When I was with Josh a couple weeks ago on his podcast, he was talking about the church he went to, and they were preaching against anything like that, calling it of the devil. And so, I just how this has been used.
Yes, yes. Unfortunately, the Bible has been used often and regularly to hurt people.
Or, yeah, just to prevent any kind of approach to other ways to experience God or find God within, or like a very narrow definition of what is considered wholesome and the light.
And along that line, I do like darkness. I like this time of year when it gets dark.
Yeah.
I know it's hard for a lot of folks to wake up in the dark, to leave work in the dark, but there's something beautiful, and I feel enclosed, and I don't know. I just like it. And so it's, for me, that word darkness is tricky. I think I understand what Paul is trying to say. Throw off the works of anger and injustice, throw off the works of arrogance and self-righteousness, throw off the works of indulgence.
Yeah.
And that all congregates in that one word, darkness, I think is problematic, because darkness is important. I read a great book by Barbara Brown Taylor, The Gift of Darkness, and it's really beautiful to appreciate darkness.
Well, yeah, that's central to Jung's ideas about how Christianity kind of went the wrong way by saying, this is dark, this is light, and we're going to throw off darkness, and then we lose wholeness. So I prepared, even though I had different readings. This is from Parker Palmer via Richard Rohr. And Parker Palmer is a Quaker, and he's quoting Thomas Merton. So we've got all these biggies here. Thomas Merton claimed that there is in all visible things a hidden wholeness. But back in the human world, where we are less self-revealing than Jack Pines, Merton's words can at times sound like wishful thinking. Afraid that our inner light will be extinguished or our inner darkness exposed, we hide our true identities from each other and become separated from our own souls. We end up living divided lives, so far removed from the truth we hold within that we cannot know the integrity that comes from being what you are. And what you are has darkness to it. So I'm really glad you brought us there. Really important.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, Barbara Brown Taylor's book is Learning to Walk in the Dark. Learning to Walk in the Dark. And she talks, about growing up in a church that's just like bright all the time, and so light and so bright that there is no darkness at all. And then how that's hard when hard things happen in your life. And just as you said, right, that need for a wholeness and connection and integration.
Yeah, at church this past Sunday, I felt the call to ask for a prayer for my family, and it was a little hard to go up there and admit the brokenness within my family, to just admit that. And after I made the prayer for healing in my family that has a lot of hurt and distrust in it, so many people came up to me afterwards. Many people came up and said, I am there. I am going through that too. And so when we share our darkness, this quote that I just read, if I at least admit it to myself, then I get back in touch with who I really am. And that's the only way to connect to my soul. And then if I admit it to others, then we build emotional intimacy, and it's so important. So I don't know. It's almost like I do appreciate Paul, and I think he was doing a great job. But is it what we need right now? I mean, is this reading what we need right now? I don't think so.
Well, yes, and I do right now see a lot of horrible things in our country, and people acting poorly. And I would love to see people choose to do something else.
Yeah, the
And
problem.
and not to be bigoted and so hateful.
Right, but Paul isn't named that. He's named promiscuity, which, people are going to say, well, that's not me.
Right, right. If we limit it, I don't participate in orgies,
Exactly.
so I'm in the clear. And I think then that's just the surface rather than letting the truth of this reading touch my heart.
Yeah, and I think it's hard. It's hard to crack it open, I think
Mm-hmm.
you've brought me there. You've cracked it open but you've cracked it open for me to see why I don't like the reading. That it's that what we need right now is to embrace wholeness.
Mm.
That's the work of our culture right now, and this kind of wagging finger and stay in the light and stay out of the darkness.
Mm-hmm.
That it's funny. I've been listening to a podcast that I've mentioned that is about a Christian church and its charismatic leader and how he went off the rails.
Mm.
And I didn't know anything about this. And I was talking to a friend who has been part of those big mega churches, and she
Mm-hmm.
knew all those stories. And she wasn't surprised because she'd heard it so many times. But for me, a church leader, any of us who are trying to be holy, if we disassociate from darkness in ourselves, it is much easier to go off the rails. And so you get these stories of these people preaching purity, but they're going to prostitutes, or
Mm-hmm.
preaching purity and, yeah, they're having pornography in their home, whatever it is, because they've split off from that part. They don't even know it's them anymore. And that's how these crazy, like, what is the word when something scandal?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's like a psychological reason.
Okay, I think I really hear you now, is wholeness right now. And I totally agree with that. I totally agree with that. And I think we in our country need to take a good hard look at how we're treating other people and why we are. And maybe it's that connection to the wholeness in myself that enables me to step back from all those negative behaviors.
Right, because as we talked about last time, there are plenty of people on the other side politically who are invoking Jesus as they go after immigrants in Chicago. And for Halloween, they won't even take a pause with ICE. They said they won't for the kids. And they can they can feel like they're on the moral high ground, like these people broke the law or whatever their moral high ground is, instead of being in touch with their own broken place that says, I'm afraid there isn't enough for all of us. I'm afraid of the stranger.
Mm-hmm.
I'm afraid of the liberal. Whatever it is, which I think those things often motivate this violence.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not in touch with it because I'm just focused on this, I'm in the light, I'm doing the right thing.
Rather than embracing it all.
The polarization within me,
yes,
becomes reflected in the culture.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why this reading, I'm going to embrace the part about waking up. That's really, we need that.
Mm-hmm.
And the time is coming and it's time to do it. Yeah, the rest of it, I have to kind of push away.
The gospel is from Matthew. Jesus said to his disciples, "As it was in the days of Noah, so it will be at the coming of the Son of Man. In those days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, up to the day that Noah entered the ark. They did not know until the flood came and carried them all away. So it will be at the coming of the Son of Man. 2 men will be out in the field, one will be taken and one will be left. 2 women will be grinding at the mill, one will be taken and one will be left. Therefore, stay awake, for you do not know on which day your Lord will come. Be sure of this. If the master of the house had known the hour of the night when the thief was coming, he would have stayed awake and not let his house be broken into. So too, you must also be prepared, for at an hour you do not expect, the Son of Man will come. I think I would like to start this conversation by remembering that when we celebrate Christmas, we celebrate 3 things. We celebrate the birth of Jesus, right? We celebrate Christ in our midst. And we are also celebrating and preparing for, during Advent, the coming of Christ in the second time. So it's all 3. And so we definitely get that flavor of preparing for the second coming here.
Yeah, and of course, I'm going to emphasize for myself that none of those are literal things for me. They're all metaphors for what's happening within me, within our community, that Jesus is born in me. And this reading is the Kairos moment when I'm awake enough to make the right choice for the world, for my soul. I mean, the idea of somebody being taken and somebody not being taken makes the metaphor harder for me, because I see it as I'm awake enough to make the right choice. And so I get to enter the kingdom because, as somebody who's older and has some history, I can see that life is about trying to keep making the right choices. It's like eating right or exercising. Like, the more you do it, the easier it gets. And so to have a discipline of being honest with myself and others, then when the time comes where Rick and I have this incredibly difficult fight and it feels like our marriage is falling apart, but we've both been doing the work, and we, instead of it falling apart, we have a breakthrough and we get closer. We get so much closer. That Kairos moment is where I'm thinking of from this reading.
All right. Sure. I can see that. Yeah. And I think maybe this is a difference between the two of us. Like I do believe that Jesus was born, and I celebrate Christ coming into the world, right? And I do see and experience Christ in my midst today.
Yeah.
Right? And I don't know how it will be, but somehow or another, I do believe that there'll be a moment where God is all in all, right? That end time.
Right. Yeah, well, Jesus is a historical,
Right.
There's a literal there. It didn't probably happen in December, they know,
No,
but
probably not.
But the historical birth isn't as interesting to me as what it represents.
Sure.
Yeah, I have no problem with that.
Okay.
But I guess I did react to this idea of the second coming because, and we've talked about this, this militant Jesus coming back, and
yeah, that doesn't work for me either.
Right.
Militant Jesus,
never.
Period.
Yeah.
Doesn't work for me. So, and there are, right, that whole idea that one will be taken and one won't be, that feels really awkward to me.
Yeah.
that maybe it is that wake-up call, that cold water that Jesus is splashing on his disciples. Wake up.
That's the thing. I think this whole Sunday is about waking up, and I
Mm-hmm.
think we can sleepwalk our days, and there are moments that require us to know the right thing to do, to make the right choice. Not that we don't make mistakes. I mean, we do, but I love that word kairos. I keep using it.
Mm-hmm.
Will you define it for us, Mars?
Kairos time? Like time outside of time as opposed to chronos time? Is that what you mean?
I thought, and I've been using it to mean kairos is an opening in time
Mm-hmm.
where there's an opening for transformation. There's an
Mm-hmm.
and we could say there's always that, but it's a moment. I keep going there because of what these readings are saying. Is they're eating, they're drinking, they're getting married, they're having sex, and then boom, there's a flood. And so things happen, and we can say in our own lives, things happen, disease happens,
Mm-hmm.
loss of income or loss of relationship,
Mm-hmm.
death. And where will we be when those big things happen? Are we awake enough so that when things happen, we can move with grace and feel God's grace and offer it or live it?
Yes, that going through the motions. In this makes me think of the movie Matrix, our
Yeah, I
conversation.
love that movie.
Right. And all of these humans are in these pods asleep and just kind of going through their life. And then the ones who are awake have a harder time. The ones who have awoken and left their pod is harder than in the Matrix where things are beautiful
Yeah,
and simple.
yeah,
But yet that is exactly what we're called to. Anthony DeMello, in the introduction to one of his books, talks about spirituality as waking up. And just like what you said, Anthony DeMello talks about people who are born asleep, they live their whole lives asleep, they get married asleep, they birth children asleep, they die asleep. And yet we are called to wake up. Spirituality is waking up.
yeah, which requires what we were talking about earlier, this
Mm-hmm.
grappling with the shadow. So Jesus says in the reading, one will be taken and one will be left. But it's not really explained what that even means. And of course, now we have this idea of the rapture, but but what does he mean here? I mean, is it better to be taken or left?
Wow, what a great question, because I see this reading, always saw it through that eyes of rapture, which isn't biblical, but
It's not biblical. In Revelation, it's biblical. No, not even there.
no, not as we understand rapture. Excuse me, or not as the kind of the culture talks about rapture. Anyway, it's all Hollywood. One will be taken. So is it better to be taken or is it better to be left?
Where are they taken? How should I know what this means? Did they know what he was meaning?
Right.
Two men will be out in the field. It's almost like, yeah, this swept in the whirlwind and taken away, but taken away by the flood was the earlier example.
Mm-hmm.
That's not cool.
No. And maybe this feels for me the important piece is the division, right? Like who's awake and who isn't awake. And somehow or another, there's some kind of separation.
Yeah, I think about this idea of being taken by emotions, being
Mm-hmm.
hijacked,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to being grounded and sort of having that stability. And in that way,
Mm-hmm.
being taken isn't a good thing.
Yes.
Why doesn't Jesus tell us?
Jesus, could you say a little more about that?
And then he gives the example of the thief.
Mm-hmm.
and the house being broken into because of sleep.
But maybe we're the house, Laura. Maybe I'm the house that Jesus needs to break into. But like that shattering of my sleep, like and if I'm awake, do I embrace the Lord who's coming? Because Jesus is saying that God's like the thief,
Boy,
right? Did
no,
I change that?
you are. I mean, he's
The Son of Man is like the thief in the night.
yeah.
So if I'm awake, then do I set a banquet for the thief?
It's very confusing because before that, the idea is that stay awake and do not let your house be broken into.
Right.
So this is very dreamlike. So let's go back and approach it like a dream. We've got a flood, we've got people in fields disappearing, we've got a thief going into a house, and then we've got the Messiah coming. I
and
mean, go
and the
ahead.
importance of preparation, right? And the importance of staying awake. So yeah. I'm sorry, keep going.
Well, as a dream, where I'm going is the Son of Man will come and be as disruptive as a thief, as a flood, and as people being taken out of a
Mm-hmm.
field.
Mm-hmm.
That's how disruptive God is to my agenda, my ego's agenda.
Mm-hmm.
And if I stay awake, maybe I can catch my ego's. You mentioned the Matrix, and the Matrix I heard is kind of about this mindfulness,
Mm-hmm.
a Buddhist kind of mindfulness, but it could be Christian too. And that if I'm mindful, if I'm awake, then when Jesus comes in a situation, I'm able to see my darkness. I'm able to go, oh crap, my selfishness is here. I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to go there. I don't want to do this. That if I'm awake, I can engage with God and I can recognize, yeah, I can recognize my flaws, my shadow, my less than, the part of me that isn't really fully wanting the kingdom.
If I'm awake, it's not a disruption,
Not the same kind of disruption, right?
right? If I'm awake, then I can roll with it. I can go with it.
Yeah.
As opposed to, the shock.
And so the one being taken doesn't sound very good in this dream thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If I'm awake, my inner sanctum isn't violated. I'm
Mm-hmm.
able to hold boundaries in situations that require me to hold a boundary. I'm awake to that.
I'm also awake to things that are uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Or maybe not welcome, but at least to work with them.
Right, for sure.
That email that trips me up, the conversation that all of a sudden, really grabs onto the back of my spine. And as well as, big life events, like someone's house burning down. One of our listeners,
Oh
their
no.
their house, this is years ago now, but they were all gone on a family event, came back, and their house was gone.
Oh wow.
Not one thing. Now this listener is very connected with God as well as her husband, and so that awakeness in order to manage the disruption and to ask the bigger questions like what really is important and how do I want to live?
Right. Yeah, that's beautiful. And in a different way, I would say that the house and the thief in a dreamlike
Mm-hmm.
way, I do want to come back to this idea that if I am, if the house represents me,
Yes.
then, well, I personally think the issue of boundaries, especially for women, spiritual women. We all want to do everything, and the ability to say no, the ability to have a boundary, that thief that wants to steal my sense of self or whatever. I don't know. I just want to stay with that as a dream. It's not the only interpretation of this, of course, but maybe one.
It's a great interpretation. And something I've not heard before about looking at all these things as disruptions and that, like you said, to protect what is deep within me, what is home.
Yeah.
Whatever that is, and not give myself away. I used to think of Advent as this really lovely, beautiful, peaceful time, but these readings, that's not what they're about, right? They're about staying awake and being prepared and not falling to sleep, not having a lullaby.
Right. And so that's an interesting word, lullaby, because we are preparing for the birth of God within us.
Yes.
And,
yes.
For Jungians, we might call it the divine child. And what is it to allow that divine child to live in me? I think it's a very powerful archetype of not just innocence, but you know how children are brave?
Yes.
And they are honest and they go toward what they want. Like, we acculturate ourselves so away from the child. And I know, as a person who trains actors and who worked on that myself for decades, that reclaiming that child archetype is, I think, really important. That's, to me, what this season is about.
And in this first week, right, hope. How does hope relate to all of this? Not that we need to explore it, but just a question for ourselves and for our listeners. How do we hold on to hope? And how does hope dialogue with being awake?
You want to try a crack at that?
No, I was just putting the question out there. Yeah, no, and not that you need to respond to that either, but I think it's something just to kind of walk around with.
Well, wow. Oh my gosh. This will be an edit nightmare. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for holding our hand as we struggle along. Thank you so much. And, we're starting to release a day early. And if you're a follower or subscriber, you will be alerted to that. So if you haven't followed or subscribed, please do. And thank you so much for listening.
Thank you. It's so good to be with you. Until next time.